Hi, this is Parvin Dabas, and you're watching the MMA India show. Me and Akhilesh chatted with Daniel Isaac, who is the official spokesperson of the All India Mixed Martial Arts Association. Basically, the topic was about the recent IMMAF Asian Championship, which happened on the sidelines of UFC Singapore just a couple of days before UFC Singapore, where there were 3 Indian fighters selected. One had a family problem and had to head back, could not fight. The other 2 did lose in the first round itself. Now, there have, even in the past, the couple of championships that we speak about, amateur championships, the Indian fighters have all lost in the first round. And that is the main focus of our conversation with Daniel, since AIMMAA is the one responsible for sending fighters. So here is the chat.
Hey Daniel, how are you?
What's up, gentlemen? How's it going?
Hey Daniel. Good, good, good.
All good, all good. Sorry. Yeah, so thank you, Daniel. You know, I know it's after midnight for you, but we appreciate you coming on, because we primarily wanted to talk to you after, as I previously told you, our chat with both Sean Shelby and Joe Carr from UFC. So we wanted to just get some updates regarding IMMAF competitions, and as I said, how the process is done, just for better understanding. So let me again just start. Can we start, or Parveen?
Yeah, please. Yeah, it started. Yeah.
So just to give you a bit of information or background. So when I met Sean Shelby, I specifically asked him, what are your thoughts about India? Because back in 2014, they were supposed to come to India. Then Sean said basically what Joe Carr said as well, where they said, we think the market is still not ready. I specifically asked them how many years they still see in coming to India. And they said about 3 years at least, because A, they want to get some Indian fighters on the card as well. But according to them, the level is still not there for them to compete in the UFC. So, the other thing is, I was there in Singapore for the UFC Singapore, as well as the Asian Championships, the IMMAF Asian Championships. So basically what I firstly wanted to ask you is, how is the selection process done for these IMMAF Championships?
Well, I think it's important for us to look at the scenario. If I want to address one at a time, before we talk about the UFC. In 2016, we had the Sony channel that sponsored or was ready to sponsor about 10 athletes to represent India. That was the way things are supposed to be done. You have funds for a team to represent your country. You have a non-political, non-red tape selection process where people who are talented and who deserve to represent your country are selected. Ideally, that selection process would be by tryouts, and the best players get the opportunity for those funds, and then you get to go represent your country. Unfortunately, we ran into bad luck, because so many of the athletes on the team just did not get their visas, and unfortunately, most of the guys who were medal prospects just didn't get their visas. So we ended up rushing through the process, and we were just maybe about 2 weeks before we had to travel, and we had to just do our best to see who had, number one, who had visas, who was in some fighting shape, and then select the team. But honestly, after that, it's been a little difficult for us to approach sponsors like Sony, because when people were ready with the funds, there were some issues with travel and documents. So this time for Singapore,
can I just interject 1 second? I just want to ask you, Daniel, just as a thing, don't you think it's better not to go than be represented badly, because as what I'm understanding from what you're saying is the whole process of sending people who are not ready and then faring so badly was actually a step backwards, because then sponsors do back off if you're not doing well. So why not? Why shouldn't we admit that, okay, the visas weren't ready for the people who were? Why should we send? I don't want to, because every fighter deserves respect, but why should we send people who are not ready against people who are, against a top-run competition, and then they don't do well, the country doesn't look well, and then sponsors back off? Do you think in hindsight it would be better to have waited for the next one and get all of these things sorted out, rather than sending fighters who weren't ready to fight in that sphere?
Well, you know, Praveen, I have a 50-50 thought on this. I think for a country like India, if we are going to wait and see when favorable terms are going to come our way, and if we wait for those times, I think it's going to be like a never-ending story, which is going to be addressed when I talk about what
I'm not talking about favorable times. I'm just talking about sending the best possible. That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly, which is favorable terms. And I'm not saying favorable times. I'm saying favorable terms. I mean, when you have the money, then you're running into issues where visas are concerned. When you have the visas, you might not necessarily have people who can win. But for me, I personally feel, and this might not be everybody's opinion, but this is my own opinion. I personally feel that it's important for us to be out there and at least to represent, and at some level start working our way up rather than just not being there. I mean, if I can just jump topics for a second, Akhilesh, I feel that what the UFC people are talking, and you can quote me, I feel that's a lot of rubbish, by them saying that it's going to take 3 more years for maybe an Indian fighter to be featured on the UFC. I mean, 5 years ago, they said, well, it's maybe 5 years. You know, when it's 5 years, they say, well, it's going to be 3 years. You know, for a promotion like the UFC, letting fighters go who are of that high caliber, and those fighters being let go and then going to other promotions like Bellator, it just shows that for the UFC, their standards are going higher and higher and higher by the year. So if the UFC expects Indian fighters to reach that caliber, I mean, what exactly is that caliber that they're looking for? Because their caliber keeps getting higher and higher. So I honestly feel they just don't have the right investors, you know, to invest into a strong base for the UFC in India, and they haven't met the right people. And unless they reach that point of time, unless someone's ready to invest enough of money for an Ultimate Fighter India show, they're never ever going to do it. And everybody, even if it's going to be a really good fighter, maybe the bestest Indian fighter that we have, if he goes there, I know he will lose, because they're not going to give him an easy fight. They're going to put him against somebody who's the best in Asia, and he will not necessarily win.
So things, two things, just, you know, what you said. First is, when you talk about TUF India, when you have, so this is where the amateurs take very prominent role. So if the amateurs not perform at the IMMAF world level, how can we confidently say these are the guys that are going to represent India in the UFC, because they are not able to go past the first round in the IMMAF championships? And when we talk about the pro fighters, when we talk about the best Indian fighter today, who do you mean? So if you take the name of Bharat Khandare, who recently lost in Brave in the first round, you talk about Chetan Agarwal, who recently lost in Brave. So these are the fighters that have been losing to people, honestly, who are not UFC level. So when we talk about the TUF India or Indian fighters representing India in the UFC, why would they look at people that are losing to lower competition?
Yeah, I just want to interject here, sorry, is according to me, it's not just about winning, losing, but it's also about putting up a good fight. You know, even if we saw in the recent IMMAF or any of them, we've not been able to get out of the first round. So even if we talk about fighters, and I think there's a point to be made on both sides, that first of all, the UFC has a right that they do need local fighters. If a promotion is to do well in India, they do need local fighters, because just like if they did in Singapore, they need fighters from around that region to make that card successful for the people to come, and why not, right? Now, whose responsibility is it to make sure fighters of that caliber are there after all these years? You know, is it their responsibility? Is it the responsibility of investors to come in? And will we find fighters in an Ultimate Fighter-like competition if we don't have them already? It's not like the Ultimate Fighter will train them, but it's about discovering them, according to what you're saying, right, Daniel?
Well, to answer what Akhilesh said initially, India is a land of 1 billion people. I mean, there are so many fighters, honestly, there are so many fighters who have not been featured as yet on any MMA show, I feel, who are so talented, who come from the judo backgrounds, who come from the wrestling backgrounds, who come from the boxing backgrounds, who can really do well. And, you know, just evidence of it can be seen sometimes at like a really big amateur event that we have once every year, which is the Body Power India Open MMA Championships. I mean, if you talk about India versus Bahrain, you should have watched what happened earlier, you know, in 2016 and earlier in 2017 when Indians were facing Bahrainian fighters at the Body Power Championships. Indian fighters were beating up so many of the Bahrainian fighters at that event. It's all about who's getting that opportunity, where the opportunity is happening, are those fighters getting access to reach there? And I mean, if you talk about the best Indian fighters, I would say somebody like Amit Thapa, I would say somebody like Narendra Grewal. These are guys who are really talented. I'm not saying that they are UFC level, but they're definitely ready to take that first step at the door. But for some reason, these guys are either not being managed too well, or they're just getting confused with all these opportunities before them, or, you know, the UFC is just not ready to look at the Indian market. I feel they don't have the right investors. I feel they are not too confident. They did take a couple of steps in 2012. If I'm not sure if you know it, but at the end of 2012, they did visit India. They came here. They did do a survey. They went to a couple of gyms. Sean Shelby himself was in India, and they didn't meet. I feel they didn't meet the right people. So I think that formula has just not worked too well. And to answer your point, Parveen, I think it's really difficult for us to say who's going to make that decision. I guess it's a show like yours who's going to put everybody on the platform to have a common mindset, to work towards a common goal, and finally answer that question.
I agree. We are talking. See, the initial question, like you said, it's about discovering the best Indian fighters, right, and putting them forward, which we totally agree with. And I would definitely say, at least from my viewpoint, like we said, there's 1 billion people. I feel there are a lot of really good Indian fighters out there, right, waiting to be discovered or trained, for that matter. You know, if they've all not ready, but the skill set is there. It is waiting to be trained, developed, and be out there. But that is why our question to you is, because at the end of the day, it is AIMMAA which is sending fighters to IMMAF, right? That is why our question is, why are we not able to put out the best Indian fighters right now? Is there still a problem in terms, like you said, in Las Vegas, there was visa issues and everything. But right now in Singapore, did we still have a similar issue? Or what is the reason our fighters cannot get out of the first round?
Okay, right, got it. If you're talking specifically about Singapore, I think there were a couple of factors. You know, some that I can discuss and some that I cannot. There was some communication issues between us and IMMAF, you know, regarding the team, and a couple of things that we were just going back and forth with.
Are you saying they have a say on the selection of the team?
Oh no, absolutely not. There was some issues going on between the team going to the event, and those issues involved a lot of discussions between AIMMAA and IMMAF, and we were almost not going to send a team because of some reasons. There was some issues going on between both the organizations, and so those discussions almost did not send a team. For some reason, we were able to reach some point of agreement, and then we were able to pull through some of the fighters. We were able to have 3 fighters to get selected, and at the end, one of the fighters, on reaching Singapore, came to know that his close relative had passed away, and he had to fly back to Bangalore, I believe. And then we were left with 2 fighters who didn't do.
I think it was Vikram who was not able to fight, right? A guy called Vikram.
I believe.
Yeah.
Right. So I believe, I mean, he's I believe a Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu guy, and so he had to fly back because of those issues. And so ultimately, it was the two fighters who didn't fare well, and so that's what happened at this event. But I think there are so many factors. I can also go on record to say organizations like the one being led by Aditya and party. They're doing more negative and more bad, if not anything else, towards the sport, because what they're doing is they're just going, just spreading, unnecessary lies and just talking to our organization, reaching out to members of AIMMAA and saying, leave that organization. We're going to give you this. We're going to give you that. Unnecessary politics. I feel, organizations like them should do their own hard work and not steal from others, not steal from other people's hard work. So a lot of people are confused about what's going on right now. I think there's a lot of turmoil right now with the state of amateur MMA in India. But I feel in a while, maybe over the next few months, I think we should be able to resolve most of these issues and get back on track to working towards the development and promotion of amateur fighters. But I think right now we're in the middle of some things that still need to be worked out.
I just want to sorry, Akhilesh, I just want to make 2 points here. Firstly,
this is concerning what Daniel said a couple of statements ago. So
okay,
if I can just put them out, because I have a couple of questions. One, you said I wanted to or had to see the fights between the Indians and the Bahrainians at the body park. So these were amateur fights, right? Or were they professional? Amateur.
No, amateur. Yeah.
Were these guys representing India this time around in Singapore or before in South Africa? No. I cannot hear you. Maybe there's no.
They did not.
Okay, so
again, sorry.
Yeah. So what was the reason why these people were not representing India at the IMMAF Championships?
Again, there's multiple factors. Number one, there are some political reasons. Number two is that although we reached out to so many of these people, they were either having government jobs and could not get leave, or some of them just could not get their passports in time. There were multiple factors because of which these fighters who were winning here did not get that opportunity. I wouldn't say that there was any reason from us because we did not allow them. I would say that there were factors that did not allow them to come for the event. And even though we did reach out and we wanted to have them go, there were factors that limited them to go.
So how, when you say we are putting out the best Indian fighters, then there comes a time when you say if jobs are more important, then they should not be representing India. And I understand where they're coming from. MMA is a very niche sport in India. I know that for a fact. Unless you have a day job, you cannot survive as a fighter. And that's the sad reality of it. But how can they be the people that represent, as you said, 1.3 billion? You said we are a country of 1.3 billion people. So why aren't we able to get fighters that can adequately represent India at the amateur level? Let's forget about UFC. Let's forget about the professional level. Just the amateur level.
We will. It's a work in progress. We will.
Okay, I just want to... Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Akhilesh. Go ahead.
Yeah, so when you say work in progress, I know for a fact that you've been working with the Indian MMA scene for 2 decades. Right. And the same amount of time has been spent, say, in lesser countries which have produced better fighters. Now, talking about the Singapore card itself, we have seen at least 3 or 4 Chinese fighters debuting on the UFC card. And China is a market that UFC has been trying to get into for 10 years now. And probably that's the reason why they are not even entering India at the moment. They want to lay the proper groundwork. So my question is, when you say it's going to take some time, aren't you giving the same reply that the UFC representatives gave me, where they say it's going to take time?
No, that reason is them not wanting to invest into India. If you're talking about China, the Art of War Fighting Championships put out so many shows that the UFC watched and came to understand that there are Chinese fighters of that caliber, and they basically just bought into the Chinese market. When they stepped in there, half of the fighters at the Art of War Fighting Championships were fighting at the UFC. I mean, fighters like Zhanti Chuan, they were guys who won at the won fights at the Ultimate Fighter, and they were being featured on many UFC cards after that. But in 2012 December, Raj Kundra and Bill Dosanjh, I'm not sure if Bill Dosanjh ever shared this with you, but they were in Vegas sitting down with the UFC and asking for the UFC if they wanted to join hands with them and enter into the Indian market. For some reason, those talks fell through. The UFC wasn't able to come to an agreement with the Super Fight League at that point of time to actually merge or to join or to buy out or whatever it is. So I think, you know, there are so many reasons, again, why pro Indian fighters haven't reached that level. But I think whereas India is concerned, maybe at this point, it's not fair for us to comment on what these issues are, because at this point there's so many going on. But when I say it's a work in process or a work in progress, it just means that we are still doing what we can to try and ensure. I'm not saying that we have the best Indian fighters out there as yet. I'm saying we have the Indian fighters, but there are still so many factors which are limiting them to get access to such events. And I'm saying that it's a work in progress that I believe we will be able to achieve very soon.
Okay. So I think there are two things. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Akhilesh. Then I will.
Yeah. So there are two things. One, you either look at the top-down approach or a bottom-up approach. I think what you're saying, you know, you said two statements. One, India hasn't provided, you know, or given out the best fighters yet. But at the same time, you're saying UFC should have entered India in 2012. Again, the same question arises. Why would UFC that often waits? We have seen that with every market, every major market in the world. You talk about Brazil, Europe, you talk about China, you talk about Japan, Korea, whichever country it is. They wait until the cream rises to the top. So how can we, when we say we still need time to provide or produce the best fighters, accuse UFC of being too complacent with the market? Isn't it?
These are two separate platforms. I was talking about amateur, and what you're talking about is pro with the UFC.
Pro. Even at the pro, you just said we haven't produced the best fighters yet.
Now I'm saying that if the UFC wants to invest into India, they can right now, because their excuse that they are giving is going to keep increasing every year. Every year, the caliber of fighters are going to keep getting better and better. It does not mean that the Indian caliber is going to shoot up to the level of the UFC with the year going forward. So all I'm saying is, if their excuse is that they don't yet have the cream of fighters, that's never ever going to happen, because I'm sure that they can find 5 Indian fighters from all across India who are pro and who are ready to compete on a card, who might not, you know, win in a spectacular fashion, but who can put up a great fight depending on the matchmaking. I mean, there are so many factors with matchmaking. There are so many factors on what the UFC would want if they want an India fighter to win, and who they would want to give them as opponents on that card. I mean, it's a business, you know. They are not ready to invest in India, or they don't have the investor ready for India as yet. That's the reason why, and they're just not ready to accept it.
But again, I can give you the same example. On the Singapore card, the guy that made his debut won the Shooto 145 Pacific Rim title, 132-pound championship. There were fighters who fought in RUFF, who fought in Dream, that were making their debuts. And these guys, let's be very honest, are levels above the Indian fighters. Right? So again, the question arises, isn't it our responsibility to make sure that the fighters are ready, at least to enter the UFC?
I'm not sure if I totally agree with you, Akhilesh. I still feel that fighters like Grewal, like Amit Thapa, in favorable situations with the right amount of preparation in a fight camp before an event, would definitely do well against such fighters who were featured on a Singapore card. I just feel the terms and the situations have not been favorable enough. I mean, people have been looking forward. I don't want to blame people. I'm just saying situations have not been working in Indian MMA's favor as yet. People have been doing so well, you know, with so many fights at the recent SFL League. But what happened after that? Everything's cooled down. You know, Super Fight League is now jumping to promote, you know, boxing. Well, what they should have been doing was still putting up smaller shows for those who did well there to keep them active on the circuit. But, you know, they're still shifting their sights. So there are so many reasons why the pros are not getting their opportunities as yet. And there's so many reasons why the amateurs are still not getting their opportunities yet. But it's a work in progress.
Now, can I just say something here? First of all, you know, I do agree with you that the MMA scene right now is in a bit of turmoil, and there is a lot of back and forth between associations and federations, and there's a couple more associations. As far as I know, I think there's 4 MMA associations in India. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I think there is too much of this back and forth, and negativity, and what I have spoken about before, Daniel, and I say this again on the show, is we would like to be a platform to bring everybody together as one to promote Indian MMA.
No, Praveen. There's only one organization. That's the organization. Everybody else is a wannabe. I'm sorry.
Well, see, now again, when you make a statement like that, you are doing the same thing that you are accusing other people of, which is, rather than, I think, according to me, rather than try to put other people down and what other people are doing, according to me, everybody needs to join hands, at least, even if we can't. Let me just finish. Let me just finish.
You join hands with somebody who's stealing from you.
Let me just finish. Let me just finish. This is what I'm coming to. This is what I'm coming to. Let me just finish. Let me finish. Yeah. Let me finish. If fighters from either your association or federation, like you just said, there are not enough smaller promotions for the better fighters to go around. But the problem is also that the promotions going around are either some of them by the association or some of them by the federation. So not all the fighters can partake in all of the fights. So if there was a platform by which any fighter could fight in any promotion, no matter where his allegiance lied, that would also stop stealing of fighters and would also give an opportunity for fighters to fight on many more cards than they're able to right now. And what we are talking about here is, trying to come to a solution of helping Indian fighters, because I think that is what it's about. According to me, of course, the association, all the other wannabes, as you put it, the federation and everything, they are just a conduit. But at the end of the day, you and me are here also because of the fighters. And if they are not being put through the best promotions possible within the country itself, then we are all collectively failing. That is one point I want to make, is we have to ensure that our fighters are fighting the best amongst ourselves as well. The problem right now is we are not even fighting our own best competition. So how are we going to be able to face the best competition abroad?
Can I answer now?
Yeah, please.
Your point was about promotions. I feel there should be 100 different promotions, but there should be one sanctioning body. There should be one organization. And I know Akhilesh will dispute that word that I'm using, sanctioning body. I understand that you have your ways, your own opinions about that. But here's what I have to say. I say there can be 100 different promotions. You can have your FCC in Mumbai, and you can have some other event in Delhi, and you can have hundreds of events happening all over the country apart from the Super Fight League. But everybody needs to agree on one association, federation, organization that's going to be the representing, governing, regulating body that's going to work towards the joint development and promotion of the sport. What I have been working for over the last 2 decades is to unite everybody and work together. But unfortunately, it's not possible for you to make everybody happy, because everybody wants to be on top. Everybody wants to be the boss. Everybody wants to be the person who gets the maximum limelight. Everyone wants to be the one getting the most promotion. And so what's happening is they're breaking an association into many different associations, which is causing confusion. I mean, why couldn't such people, rather than breaking away, stay with the organization and work towards the development of that one organization and build it stronger? So this is something that I would not agree about. I say that there should be more promotions, 100 promotions, but there should be one association and one organization. And that's why I'm saying I feel that organization is AIMMAA, and what we're doing every day is still working through each state, developing, building the organization in itself, doing our best to make sure that our officials are going out there and getting trained, getting represented, and working our way towards fighters as well. Yes, I agree that there is still so much more that we can do, but we are doing it.
I just want to put here, sorry, it's not my job to talk on behalf of other people, but the people who have broken off and formed the federation, like I said, I don't want to talk on their behalf, but they claim to have done so because they were not happy with the way AIMMAA was being run. Now, they could be right, they could be wrong. Like I said, it's not my job to talk on behalf of other people, but it is a fact that they were part of AIMMAA and then they broke off for whatever reasons. Now, I think personally, I feel there's a lot of water which has gone, under the bridge, and I'm not sure if things do come together, then I personally agree there should be one body. There should be one body which has government recognition, which follows a set sort of rules, which has an body overlooking it as well, a government appointed body or whatever, and we should have a separate referee body as well, and not coming back, of course, into past topics, so that we are not governing ourselves, so to speak. But of course, there's a lot of these issues, and what we have proposed, see, I think a show like this is maybe not, we're digressing a bit also. There's a lot of things that we need to talk about. So I do feel that the MMA India show does want to provide a platform to bring everybody together so that everything you have mentioned as well, things that we have mentioned as well, other people are mentioning, they can be brought on one table, see if there can be a resolution and how to take Indian MMA forward, because at the end of the day, it's the fighters who suffer.
I also want to just point out, we can have this conversation for 2 hours.
Yeah,
so
it's
I think it's better to just stick to the IMMAF topic, because that's what I even talked to Daniel about, saying this is the one specific topic that we want to talk to you, because if you want to bring in I know,
well, I didn't mention federation or anything.
That's a whole,
Daniel brought that up. Yeah, so that's a whole different. Yeah, so like I said, we would like to, on a separate show, if whenever you're down next to India, the MMA India show would like to provide a platform for everybody if it can become one body. Now, Daniel, you've been in this business for a long time. You have some thoughts. We would love to put your thoughts in front of everybody else. If you have a charter plan of how these bodies, if you feel they should not be there and they should recognize you, or if we feel they should amalgamate, whatever it is your ideas, we are more than happy to take those ideas and bring them under one table. Having said that, I think that's another program, but we would like to, provide a platform to bring all of the MMA, thinking minds, at least. If I don't want to call it bodies, I would at least like to say the MMA minds in our country together on a platform. Having said that, going back a little to IMMAF in Singapore, you said that there were some problems between you and IMMAF going into it. Now, did the training for the guys, were the guys already selected at that point? And did these discussions, did they stop that training, or what was the process? I'm just trying to understand is why that discussion with IMMAF would, how it came in between either the selection or in the training of the fighters.
No, we were, again, there's not much that I can say, because there are a lot of internal things which I'm unable to share and talk about on this show. But for some reason, we were not going to send a team, and so that process had not reached that level to put together an entire team. So when we did finally have a breakthrough, we did reach a point where we could only do so little as to get the fighters who already had travel ready to go. And I also felt that they did not want to lose this opportunity. It was my opinion at this particular event that we would not send a team of both officials and fighters, maybe to agree with what you said, that maybe if you don't have the best to go at an event, you should not maybe send a team. I did put my thought out to the organization, saying that I felt that we should not be represented at this particular event, but the officials said that they did feel that they wanted to be represented both at the officials level and at the team level, and so they wanted to put together a team. And so since it was a unanimous decision, we agreed to send them. But yeah, there were things which were basically obstacles of communication and organizational matters, because of which we were not going to send a team for this particular Singapore event.
Right. Now, what I also wanted to ask you is, when it comes to the amateur championships,
yes,
what is your take on the coaching rules or the level of coaching that exists in India today?
I think every state has its own set of trainers and coaches and gyms and people who are preparing their own fighters at their own levels. What they're doing is that they are bringing their fighters to smaller events in the state, getting these fighters opportunities to get seeded up. And I mean, you guys should come for the next body power event, which is going to happen in the first or second week of January. You should come and see the talent pool at that event. There'll be more than 400 to 500 fighters competing from all over India. There will be international teams, and you will get to see a lot of untapped talent at events like that. So yes, fighters get seeded from smaller events at the state, work their way up to either an All India or a national championship, and further on to another event which is body power. And then after body power, they go through some levels of training and preparation so that they can be ready for better events like the Singapore event, like the South Africa event, and then hopefully for the World Championships.
Right. So I should have been a little more specific. What do you think of the coaching levels? The levels of the coaches themselves rather than the people that they're training?
I think for the standard that MMA is in India right now, I think we have decent coaches.
Okay, because I ask you this because, as you said, in 2016, during the Vegas World Championships, you weren't able to take 9 fighters. But among the 3 fighters that you did take, there was a coach, Samuel Al Rosama, who has coached fighters, who is a referee, and still competed as an amateur fighter, and still lost in the first round. So don't you think the coaching level itself from the grassroots needs to improve for even the amateur fighters to improve?
Absolutely, it does, and we're open to all the opportunities to develop that. I mean, India's always wanted BJJ black belts and high level striking coaches to come into the gyms and start working and developing the fighters and giving better training opportunities to the Indian coaches themselves. And 5 years before, we did not have such black belts. Right now we do have some black belts in India. We do have some brown belts in India. In a city like Bangalore, before, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, having a blue belt in India was like a great thing, but now you do have brown belts, now you do have black belts. So it is working its way up, but I wouldn't say that that's the reason why Indian MMA is not still reaching the caliber that it should. I think they're just multiple factors which are beyond our control, which are restricting the fighters. But I think at this point of time, the level of Indian coaches as compared to the standard of India in itself, I think is pretty decent.
But isn't that a contradiction in itself? Because what you're saying is the level of coaches is good, but the level itself in India is not good. Aren't those contradicting statements?
No, I'm saying I didn't say the level of Indian MMA is not good. I said, as considering the standard of where Indian MMA is in right now, I said the level of coaching is fair enough and good enough for that.
Now, do you think one of the solutions for this is either sending some of our coaches abroad for courses or training, or bringing down foreign coaches, BJJ experts, etc., for workshops, seminars, so that the level of the coaches increases, and because of that, the level of the skill that they're imparting increases as well? Do you think that could be one of the solutions?
It is happening, Praveen. I mean, for the last Super Fight League event, there were so many international coaches, including ex-UFC fighter Dennis Hallman.
Yeah.
So people are visiting India. People are offering and imparting training skills to Indian coaches and fighters. Indian coaches are going abroad and training. I mean, a lot of people are going from India to Tiger Muay Thai and training there. A lot of people are going for Sambo events in Europe and attending both training for coaching and officiating. So it is happening. It's not that it is not happening. It is happening. It's still working its way up.
Right. So you are maintaining a stance that India as a country for MMA is still developing. It's still not good enough.
It is developing. I wouldn't go ahead and make a statement and say it's not good enough. I would still stand by my statement that the factors are not yet favorable which are making all of this work. And so we're continuing to do our best to try and make it work. But I personally feel that Indian amateur fighters. There is a good talent pool. We're just continuing to work our way and try and make sure that these Indian amateurs who are winning understand the importance of going for an international event, and they're able to put some level of sacrifice to understand the importance and say, okay, maybe I need to, really push for that leave at that job and go and compete at that event. Maybe I need to take some leave and actually go into a training camp and prepare for that international event. Maybe I just need to take some time out and go get a passport, or give that responsibility to someone who's going to go and make that passport. So I think there are factors at the amateur level, but I say the talent pool is very good. I say that there are good enough pro fighters to get featured at international pro shows, but it's all not working out as yet. And that's the reason why an MMA media company like you guys would look at it and say, well, why is it not happening and what's the solution? But I don't think there's that one answer that you can say, here's the solution and this is how it's going to work.
I still have that question. What metric are you using to compare that the Indian talent pool is good, or that we have good enough pro fighters to represent India, say, either in ONE, either in Bellator, either in UFC, whatever it is? What is the metric that you're using? That's one thing that I want.
That's the standard that I'm using is my opinion based on my experience and my expertise, as you say, over the last 2 decades. I have traveled internationally, I have traveled for so many events, but pro and amateur, I do have a good understanding of the Indian market and the Indian experience of fighters and talent pool of fighters. I feel that formula has not yet matched its way up to make it happen. If there's Akhilesh, if there is an international promotion who is inviting a fighter to come and compete there, they're not inviting a pro to come there and compete. They're inviting him there because they know that he is to be a tomato can for their best fighter, so that they are going to get seeded to a better event. Should we say no to that opportunity? I don't think so. I say we want to take that challenge and go and see if we can make it. I say we want to take that challenge and go and try and see if we can beat that guy. So we take that opportunity. If we do well, great. I mean, Bhupesh Kamble in 2010, he knocked out Nick Miller in the first minute of the first round at Martial Combat. Everybody said that he was going to get submitted by that submission guy, but he knocked him out. Yet when Dhruv Chaudhary went to the recent Lebanon event, he did a good fight in the first round, but got caught in the second round. So it's a hit and miss. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But we're still going to keep trying. We're still going to be out there. You're not going to get us get discouraged and not do it. We're going to keep trying.
Okay, because we both have different perspectives. I understand that. I completely do. Right? I mean, you have your own perspective. I have my own perspective. But my thought, I mean, it's, again, we are veering from IMMAF to pros, so I don't want to take much time in discussing this. My only thought process is, unless you pair someone that you use as a metric, because as you said, you have trained people for 20 years. But again, the best fighter in India that many people talked about, either you talk about Amit Thapa, who lost his last fight in SFL, Bharat Kandare, you talk about, who lost his last fight in Brave. So all these fighters that have been hailed as, oh, the best fighter in India, have lost to people that are in India, or just are not, to competition that is just not good enough to even compete in ONE at the highest level. So that's my own, that's what I think. But again, we have our own perspective.
I totally understand what you're saying, and looking at it from that level, that would be an opinion. And I understand where you're coming from, but I still say that there are multiple factors which are still restricting the right guys at the right time. I mean, a fighter can be hailed as the top Indian fighter, but he would not be competing actively for the last 1 year. A fighter like Anup Kumar at one point of time was submitting everybody. For some reason, he lost to Tom McKenna, and then everything just went downwards. So it depends on that particular time. I feel there was a point of time where if Anup Kumar had that opportunity to compete, I mean, there were MMA shows in the US that was hailing Anup Kumar as being the next Indian guy to enter in the UFC at one point of time. But for some reason, that didn't happen. And so today, if you talk about Anup Kumar, he's still not that same fighter. So I guess, this maybe the same thing with Bharat Kandare, maybe the same thing with Amit Thapa, maybe the same thing with Narendra Grewal. But yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah.
But
I would agree with you that we shouldn't be encouraged and we need to keep going.
because that's the only way to take Indian MMA forward. But I also would say that the metric, of course, is always how do they fare up once they fight with an international fighter, whether it's in India or abroad. Because at the end of the day, it is an international sport. Of course, it develops within the country itself, you know, the training and everything. But at the end of the day, how good we are as a nation is only, you know, the metric applies. The proof is in the pudding when we, you know, send our fighters abroad and how they do. And a lot of them are improving, of course. I don't think we should just take the IMMAF as, you know, the sole barometer, though it is the beginning point of where we are, which is why, you know, the initial question is why aren't we not sending our best fighters, to which, you know, you said, of course, that the timing, fighters, visa, passports. So basically, you know, that you are saying that we aren't sending our best right now, but we are sending the best available fighters right now.
We are sending what is available.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The best available fighters, which is, you know, and now one last thing I just want to ask you is your opinion on, and this is something I have a very strong opinion about. Yeah, sure.
Can I just jump
please.
in just for one little point? I feel it's important for me to just make this little point. I hope I'm not taking up too much of the time of the show. But, you know, there are some situations which sometimes can discourage a fighter. You know, I don't say that somebody like IMMAF is, you know, is the god or the religion for amateur MMA across the world. And I am fighting with IMMAF, and I am arguing and debating with IMMAF as much as I can on behalf of amateur Indian MMA. So much, you know, they would tell you that maybe I'm the most hated Indian MMA person to them, because although we are their representative, I have so many issues with things that they're doing. You know, at the event where Kantaraj Agasa was representing Team India at the World Championships in Vegas, he was seeded to compete against a guy, and that guy was an American guy. Sorry, he was a Canadian guy, and if he would compete against that Canadian guy, he was going to get an opportunity to fight for or to enter into the semi-final round. Okay, this is what that formula looked like. He was selected. The seeding was going to give him that opportunity to fight at that level. If he had to compete against the Canadian fighter and would win, he was going ahead to compete in the semi-final round. So there was I would say a 90% chance that he would have a medal. At that point of time, it was the US sanctioning body that was involved in the seeding, and what these guys did was, they, just because the Canadian guy backed out and pulled out of that fight against Kantaraj should have gone through that bout and gone ahead to the next round for a medal opportunity. But what they did was, they said no, they want to put him against one of Tyron Woodley's fighters last minute, and they say, well, this is a bout change. You know, Alan and myself were arguing with the sanctioning body officials there. How can this happen? This guy's from another pool. He should be going forward and getting that opportunity. But they said no, he needs to fight against this US guy. We were like, there's no reason for him to fight. That back and forth went for so much of time, and finally Kantaraj just said no, I want to just go ahead and fight. We were not ready to put him in that fight. We said this is wrong. You should be going for that medal round. And they put him against Tyron Woodley's fighter. He had a tough fight. He lost in the third round, you know, and just because of politics. And because of that, you know, Kantaraj was so discouraged, even though I felt I specifically told Kantaraj, don't shift to the pros, stay in the amateur and you'll do really well. But he said, sir, look at the politics that's happening at the world level. I had a chance to get a medal for the country at the World Championships. Politics from the US organization did not allow me to go ahead. And so I don't want to compete in amateur. I want to shift to pro, where if not anything else, I'm going to get money. So right now, what fighters, even if they win a few fights in amateur Indian MMA, all they're thinking about is, I want to go somewhere where I can earn some money in a pro fight. So it's a mindset, you know, that's one of the factors that are still contributing. And again, that mindset has its own factors. Yeah. So I just wanted to just throw that in. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Now, my last question is basically about the medal mindset, let's say, like you spoke about fighting in the medal round. What is your opinion on, like we saw right now also, a fighter may not win any of his fights. he will lose in the very first round, but he still comes back with a bronze medal. Do you think that is beneficial for the fighter because it in some way encourages him and the country, or do you think it's wrong to reward, and it's a wrong thing, which I personally believe it's wrong to even say that he won it. Okay, he received a medal because of lack of participation or anything. Personally, I don't feel a medal in that case should be given as well. But what's your opinion on that?
Well, yeah, I do feel a fighter should earn everything he gets. And if for some reason there are 3 fighters in that particular pool, one is going to get a gold, another is going to get a silver, and the third is going to get a bronze. I mean, honestly, for me, I don't regard both medals and certificates. I think it's all about the training and the heart and the fight that you put in. So I would not account for anything that's happened over the last few international events, amateur international events where our fighters have gone abroad and competed. I wouldn't look at that as the standard as yet. I still think that there's so many more better fighters that we can send, and I'm hoping at over the next few international events we still can send them. But yeah, I personally feel it's my own opinion that a fighter should not regard medals or certificates. But I don't think it's wrong for him if he's the 3rd person and he gets a medal. I don't think it's wrong for him to say that he won that medal because he did get that medal. So
yeah, I don't think. But that's the difference. I think there's a difference in getting something and winning something. For winning, you should be able to defeat somebody. That is my point. Yes, he did get the medal.
A bronze medal doesn't mean that you defeated anyone. I mean, a bronze medal is that you basically got that medal. So honestly, that's the way amateur sports work. Amateur sports are totally different from a pro perspective. So I think maybe your perspective is more considering pro fighters. So with amateur fighters, it is amateur. It's what that word means. It's amateur. It's still fighters working their way up. So where those medals are concerned, I say it's good for them if that medal encourages them, brings them back. For some reason, if that medal helps them to get some funds from somewhere, some sponsorship to train hard and build their standard up.
Yeah, but that's my whole point. If it's helping a fighter get funds who is not our best, but who was the best available, the funds should be going to the best fighters rather than the best available fighter who was able to go abroad. If it is helping the fighter get funds, then the funds are being misused, I feel, and misplaced by going to somebody who is not the best. If we are having trials and sending fighters abroad, even if the best one was not able to go...
I think we're talking about 2 different things. I didn't say that AIMMAA is giving them funds. My example
I didn't say you were, but you did say if it helps him get funds.
No. I mean, let me clarify what I'm saying. I'm saying if a fighter has gone to Singapore and comes back with a bronze medal, and he's from, Thane or Kolhapur or whichever city in Maharashtra, and he goes back and the mayor of that town or that city says, well, you represented our country and got a medal. Here's, a gift from our city as $1 lakh rupees. Now train hard and next time go for a better event and prepare. I'm saying if he's able to get funds from some local people to encourage him, that's good for him. Now I cannot jump in there and say, hey, that money needs to go to somebody else. That's our job for us to raise our own funds and raise our own sponsorship for the deserving fighters. I'm saying if somebody gets an encouragement, that medal, if it can help him, good enough for him.
I agree, but what I'm talking about is it should not be represented as, look, I have won a bronze medal and come back to the country. That is what I'm saying is wrong. Because if you are saying, listen, I have won this bronze medal, people will think, oh, pata nahi kisko hara ke hai and jeet ke hai. I think that is a misrepresentation of the facts.
And you're entitled to your opinion, Parvin.
Of course I am, and that's what I was saying.
So yeah, just talking about what you just said, where you said the past couple of events, international events, shouldn't be looked at the defining moment for AIMMAA or for the amateur fighters in India. Do you think the next 2 events, which are the African Championships and the World Championships in Bahrain, these 2 should be seriously looked at the measuring stick of the Indian amateur fighters? Because there is only so much that we can give excuse for. We can say the past couple of events, alright, something must have happened. But when you still have 2 coming this year, do you think those should be used as a measuring stick? for Indian amateur MMA?
Now, I think right now it would be fair enough for me to say on behalf of the organization that the international events happening in India can be the measuring stick for the level of the Indian fighters right now. I would not go on record to say this event and that event is the one that should be the measuring stick. I mean, why would we want to have the measuring stick over 2 events or 3 events or even 6 months? You know, maybe it should be a year. You know, who knows? All I'm saying is that there's still so much happening. There's still so much being done, and when it reaches that level, it'll be evident enough for everyone to see. And when we see it, we'll know that that factors have been favorable and it's finally happened. So we're just going to keep working. Maybe it can happen over the next couple of months, maybe at the African Open, who knows? If terms are favorable, if things are working well for the fighters and for the teams, awesome. We're going to keep doing our best, Akhilesh.
Right. So 2 things in what you just said. One, you said international events happening in India, by which I think you mean the body power events. Right? You mean those. But again, what are the standards we are comparing ourselves to then? I mean, in SFL, we have fought Indian versus Indian and Indian won. You know what I mean? So if that's a standard that we are comparing ourselves to, then we shouldn't even talk about UFC, because that's a dream.
But Akhilesh, at the body power event, there are international teams and international fighters, amateur fighters coming in and competing.
Right, and so are the same things happening IMMAF championships. So why aren't we using those as a measuring stick and instead want to live inside our own country and say this is
what we have, or whatever, as Parvin says, best available, are getting that opportunity because it is in India. So they are getting fighters who I feel are talented are getting that opportunity. But at the events happening outside of India, not necessarily all these fighters who are talented and maybe ready for that amateur level, international amateur level, are not yet getting that opportunity. That's why I'm saying that right now, let's just look at what's happening here where international fighters are concerned, and not yet where the Indian fighters are going internationally.
So 2 things. Why can't we make sure that these best fighters that you're talking about represent India going forward? It's that simple. I mean, if you have names in mind, all we have to do is support them. I don't think it goes beyond that. If financially or passport-wise or whatever way it is, I think if we give them enough support, we are sending the best fighters that you're talking about. I don't think there's any cause for us to say they might not go.
At the event where an entire team was supposed to go and fighters who had won at body power event was selected to go, and more than half of the team just did not get their visas. So it's not that situations have not reached there where people who have been seeded here or winning here have got that or not got the opportunity. When the opportunity came in, it fell through for some other reasons. When one factor failed, the other didn't. So it's still happening, and I'm still saying we're still trying our best. I'm not saying we have reached our best. We're still doing our best, and I'm still hoping against hope that these factors will start to slowly give way and weaken as the best opportunities and the best guys we have slowly start going out there.
Right now, being again a neutral person here, that kind of comes across as an excuse rather than us trying to force the issue through. Because I can say, look, there are Indian fighters that can compete with the UFC guys, but we just haven't found them yet. Hypothetically sounds good, but realistically, how is that not an excuse that we are trying to give? Again, I'm not holding you accountable or anything like that. All I'm saying is, if you do know that...
When the UFC is concerned, I feel that's not our job. It's them who should be ready.
No, I just gave an example. I'm just using that as an example. All I'm saying is, if we know for a fact that there are these amateur guys that are good enough to win medals, why aren't we concentrating on sending them? Why aren't we getting behind them? Why is AIMMAA, as an association, under which these fighters are, trying to push them through? That's all I'm saying.
And also just as the MMA India show, we would also like to help that if you have selected some fighters, we would like to bring it to the people's attention that these are the best fighters who should be going abroad We would like to bring this to the governments or whoever's giving the visas attention. And if it doesn't happen, we would like that to bring that to people's attention as well. That listen, this was the cream of our crop and we wanted to send these guys. But because of this issue, we were not able to send them. So let's fix this. Because we need to make sure that the people who are in charge of, let's say, giving a visa or something, know that there are companies or there are shows like ours talking about these guys and they are legit. And we do want to send these guys. So if there's something we can do in that process to help, we would want to do that and be involved.
So to answer what both of you have said, Akhilesh, I still don't look at this as an excuse. I say us hard and doing our best. I'm saying we're trying, we're continuing to to put our best effort. It's not that we're not putting in our best effort. Factors have not worked in our favor as yet. And yes, as what you said, Parvin, if for the next selection event, the moment we're able to have a list of people who are talented and have their paperwork ready, but are not yet supported with funds, both us as an organization, we're going to continue doing what we need to try and bring in the funds to support these guys. And yes, we will share that information with you guys, saying these are the guys ready, but they don't have the money or the resources as yet to go and participate. So yeah, we will do that. Thank you for that invitation.
Great.
And finally, I also wanted to ask you for the African and World Championships, immediate amateur international championships. What have they been selection processes done? Proceed or what's going on regarding those tournaments?
Yeah, there are. So we usually start working on this at least 4 to 6 months before the actual event in itself, where the heads of the state. Yeah, so we reach that point where the state associations are able to have people who have already passed through some tryout level, and they send us those lists. Also, there is direct access because we want to make sure that there's no red tapeism. So people are able to send in applications directly saying, I want to compete, I have this experience, where can I come and try out? And we have multiple locations and gyms across India where people can come and try out, and a video can be sent across to us. So I do know that there is at least, looking at the first round of selections as maybe C, and then B as where we're able to filter out some level of of fighters, and then A where you actually find your team ready. I think right now we're at the C stage, and as soon as we're able to have a better information for you on that, I should be able to pass it on.
So the process have started at least, because you said 4 to 6 months, so it's already within that period.
Yes.
So they have already started. All right. So once the fighters have been selected, I'm pretty sure you're going to share that information with us as well, what the records are.
Or even before they're selected, if you have something where you're inviting fighters, because we get messages from people all the time who want to find a way, who are training to get into MMA. So if you'd like to send that information, like you said, where you make a call for people to send in videos or anything, we would be happy to share that as well.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, my immediate focus is again on the African and World Championships, and again I really hope, because after talking to the UFC representatives, I understood that India cannot be anywhere within that sphere for the next 5 years. So immediately my reaction was, enough of this. We need to get and work this out, because it doesn't look like every other country in the world except for India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is, again, we are doing this for the betterment of the sport, and that is why I want to talk about IMMAF as well. But some other day, as we previously discussed, I hope we can talk about just resolving everything that exists in India today.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Daniel, so much for your time. I know it's pretty late there, and we have the day ahead as well. So thank you so much for your time. Look forward to speaking again. Thank you.
Thank you, Parvin. Thank you, Akhilesh. Take care, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks.
So that was our chat with Daniel Isaac, me, Akhilesh, and Daniel of AIMMAA. Basically, I want to say one thing, that it's not just my opinion that a fighter who gets a medal does not have the right to go to his hometown and meet the mayor and get some money out of it. I don't think that's my opinion. I think it's a fact. If you have not earned the medal, if you have not won the medal just because you participated in it, I don't think it's right to go and be felicitated for it as if you've come back, as a champion having beaten somebody. I think that's cheating. I think that's unfair. I think that's fooling the people. And there have been times in the past where when people did not know that what actually happened in the fight, that people have come back and been welcomed as such, just with a medal that they did not win, but they got rather. And I'm making this distinction very clear because I think everybody has realized that Indian MMA needs to really improve on the international stage going forward. And we cannot do that if we keep fooling ourselves by saying that accepting a medal which you have not won is going to do some good. There are other fighters. We have a very large talent pool of excellent fighters. Of course, as we discussed right now with Daniel and Akhilesh, some of them have not been able to make it because of visa issues or whatever. These things need to be sorted out. But if we continue this, tradition of allowing fighters to be felicitated and congratulated for receiving medals which they have not won by beating any single person. And I'm not talking about where you've gone through some rounds and lost in the semifinals but received a bronze as a losing semifinalist. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about not even having won a single fight, and most of the cases not getting out of the first round itself. I think we have to change this mindset that it's okay for the fighters to go and be felicitated in their hometowns and even receive money in sometimes because they've received a medal, so to speak. So let's stop fooling the Indian public with these fake awards. Every Indian fighter deserves to be felicitated and rewarded if they have won, because we need to reward excellence. We need to reward that, so everybody strives for that. Let's not reward somebody. Of course, entering into the ring is a very, very big thing. Every fighter needs to be congratulated and felicitated for entering the ring. But let's make it clear that let's not reward somebody for not winning. Let's make sure that we set our standards high so that there is something to achieve. Let's not just reward people for being part of a team and being there because there were not enough fighters. There were only 3 fighters, and so the third guy got a bronze. Let's make it very clear. As far as the MMA India show goes, we will not we will not be you can say bringing such fighters to a fore. We do want to promote excellence. We do want to promote local fighters, as we have been. We have been promoting local promotions, local fighters. There are a lot of fighters who have been on the show, but let's be honest about whether they have won, whether they have lost. If they have lost, we need to see the reasons why and continue to encourage them to get into winning ways. If they have won, then yes, let's get together and encourage them, felicitate them, and see what they need to keep doing better. That's all I have to say. This is Parvin Dabas. Thank you for joining once again.